All right, I like solving problems. Doesn't have to be math problems. I like solving problems. And here we're going to be solving functions and evaluating functions. And they're two sides of the same coin. I looked over to my desk to find a coin. I don't have any coins. So we're going to do two things: evaluate and solve. So evaluating a function means that we know the input and we want the output. So this is the normal, common thing that happens all the time. Someone says, evaluate f of 3, right? Maybe find, might be what it looks like, right? Find f of 3. We know the input. The input is what's inside the parentheses. And we're curious about the output. Whereas if I say solve something, that's the opposite. So you might see something like solve 5 equals f of x. Solve for x. Well, in that case, we know the output is 5, and we're curious, what we want to find out is the input. Okay, so evaluate and solve, two sides of the same coin, because it's just knowing one part and trying to find the other part. Just which one do we know and which one are we trying to find? So let's go back to our favorite NQ table from an earlier video. It's the only NQ table we've had. Answer the following. Oh, look. First one says evaluate, just like this. And the second one solves, just like the second thing. The evaluate means we know the input. We're curious about the output. Input is what's inside these function parentheses. So which one of these is input, N or Q? Well, before we said that Q is a function of N. N was the input. And usually the first row of the table will be the input, or the first column. You can write a little note to yourself if you forget. Label which one's the input and which one's the output. So if 3 is our input, we find 3 in our table, or the input row. We're only looking at inputs, and we're wanting to know when the input is 3. Input is 3 right here. And when the input is 3, what is the output? It's 7. So this is our answer. Evaluate the function g being evaluated at 3. Also, let's look over here on the left. Technically, I should have written g of n, just to be consistent with what we're calling this function. Now, solving is the opposite. Solving is we know the output, and we're curious about the input. What kind of input gives us an output of that? All right, well, you could just say, let's look at the outputs and find when one of them is 6. And say, okay, it's 6 when n is equal to 4. What's the problem here? I maintain that this is not the correct answer. It's partially correct. Yeah. You take 4 goes to 6. An input of 4 goes to an output of 6. But that's not the only thing that goes to an output of 6. When we evaluate, we're evaluating functions which only have one output. When we evaluate, there will only be one answer. But when we're solving, functions don't have to go both ways. When we're solving, there could be multiple inputs. That's when n is 4 and when n is 2. Usually we like to write these in order with the smallest on the left. We're going to say when n equals 2 and 4. And again, the way that this kind of works is that g of 2 equals 6 and g of 4 equals 6. Both of these inputs, I'm kind of in the way. Both of these inputs have the same output, the one that we want. That's how we solve. We're solving them with tables right now. In the next video, we'll solve them with functions and graphs. Sorry, they're all functions, with graphs and then with formulas. Let's finish this video with a try it now. Okay, so try to do this problem on your own, see what you get, and then we'll go through it together. All right, G of 4. 4 is the input. We need to find an input of 4. Oh, we found it. Input of 4 gives an output of 6. The G of 4 is 6. That's really nice because it also wants us to solve what input gives us an output of 6. Well, we already did part of it. Wait, this is just the same as part B. Yeah, well, extra practice. And then just like before, we know that G of 2 equals 6 and G of 4 equals 6. So there are two different ways to answer this teaching moment. Every mistake is an opportunity, okay? So, right, this answer was one way to answer part B. This is another way to answer part B. You can say either of these forms, these both say the same thing, and I'm okay with either of these boxed purple things. Okay? You could write it in either way. That's it for this video. Hope you learned about how to solve and evaluate functions. Solving means we have an output. We want to find the input. Evaluating is we have an input. We want to find the output. Always try to find and identify which one is which. Input, output, input, output. Bye-bye. Have a good one.